Hi there, this is Ryan Blair, and in this message, you're about to learn why every vote counts. Voting is a universal language that's applied in a myriad of ways. Voting takes place for a pope, for a union leader, team captain, beauty queen, and even for pig snorting contests. As jurors, we vote for innocence or guilt. As judges, we vote for talent contests. And as family members, we vote on where and what we're going to eat for dinner. And as citizens, we all vote for political leaders. And while the range and the significance of each vote is diverse, one constant remains, and that is, every vote counts. The duties or the responsibility of a citizen in a democratic society can be separated into two groups: mandatory responsibilities such as paying taxes, and duties not demanded by law, such as voting. The right to vote is a duty and a responsibility, as well as a privilege. Modern democracies, including the United States, extend the right to vote to almost all responsible adult citizens. This inclusive voting right is known as universal suffrage. Indeed, one person, one vote is seen as a hallmark of a representative democracy. Abraham Lincoln best described democracy as government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And for that government to be by the people, however, requires that the people decide who shall be their leaders. And without free and fair elections, there can be no democratic society. Without the constant accountability of government officials to the electorate, there can be no assurance of any other rights. See, the right to vote is not only an important individual liberty, it is also a pillar of free government. The right to vote is one of our most important civil liberties, and those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must support the vehicle of freedom. By fulfilling your obligation to express yourself with the ballot, you will preserve the democratic system. Moreover, voting is a sustained obligation that accompanies and protects the liberties that you and I enjoy. So why vote? Does my vote really count? Is it worth it? Now, these are questions with a long history of debate. And while you may feel like the lone sane voice in a shouting match, I assure you that the answer to these questions is a resounding yes. Unfortunately, many people argue that their votes do not count. They point to the sea of millions of voters and to the electoral college system as proof that no individual vote counts. However, those who do not vote are the only ones for whom that argument holds true. Their belief is flatly untrue, as individual votes do count, especially under our electoral college process. In this system, a candidate need not win a simple majority of national votes, but instead must win the electoral college votes in a sufficient number of states. This is accomplished by winning the popular vote in each one of those states. Now, this difference may seem subtle, but it is crucial, and it makes individual voters much more important than a flat nationally counted ballot. See, if the right to vote no longer existed, our country would no longer survive as a democratic nation, but completely totalitarian. By not voting, you give away your right to influence the government overall. More importantly, however, not voting takes away the will of the majority that governs this country and replaces it with the will of the minority. Voting in any type of election, from local elections to presidential primaries, provides an important way to voice your opinions regarding elected leaders and overall policies. Voting also helps you to decide your own future by electing a person who might reflect your own personal views. See, voting is a fundamental right, and the ability to vote exists as one of the most cherished rights that our forefathers fought for, marched for, and died for over the centuries. And it's worth noting that wars still rage so that citizens of other countries can earn this right, the right that many of us now take for granted. See, the act of voting is a right that should be used with the utmost consideration and care. Voting is so much more than just a right to be heard. It's a privilege of democracy. Thus, it's a moral obligation. And because we live in a republic and enjoy the right of voting, we are not just people who elect the government, but we are a small and an integral part of the government. And of all the freedoms, the right to vote is perhaps the most important one. However, not all citizens vote. So why is that? Well, the reasons have historically included apathy, disillusionment with the political structure, and the common belief that their one vote will really not count in the long run. For so many reasons, they do not bother to vote, preferring instead to let others decide for them how their futures will unfold. Yet, there are other democracies in this world where people are protesting, fighting, and even dying for their right to vote. It was Thomas Jefferson in 1900 who put forward an important reason for voting with this quote. He said that should things go wrong at any time, the people will set them to rights by the peaceable exercise of their elective rights. And for centuries, we've seen people rise up and demand this right. Why is that? Well, historically, their motivation was a quest for freedom and empowerment of personal liberties. They strongly believe that their one vote really does count. And for so many reasons, they're compelled to vote, preferred to vote for the leaders that they trust, the leaders who will help them to enjoy their newfound freedoms. Representational government, the electorate, is our country's foundation. And founded in the 18th century, the United States of America fought a rebellion against taxation without representation. The King of England at that time imposed taxes on the colonies, which had no voice in the British government, by which they might hope to change laws that affected their prosperity. And after the Revolutionary War, great care was taken to craft a constitution. This gave us the rights and the freedoms designed to ensure a voice in government for each individual. However, as with all rights and freedoms, the right to vote carries with it vital responsibilities. And when citizens fail to meet this obligation, our system of government does not function as it should. People offer a variety of reasons for ducking this responsibility, yet all of them amount to nothing more than excuses. Still, those who refuse their duty feel no restriction on their right to complain. They will not voice their opinions when it matters most, yet they feel entitled to express them at all other times. See, few things are as pathetic and irresponsible as someone who complains about government, but who refuses to voice their opinion where it matters most, and that is in the voting box itself. So let's talk about democratic literacy. See, democracy demands an informed electorate. An informed electorate is a prerequisite for democracy. These two factors are so intertwined that the failures or inadequacies of one can render the entire system ineffective. And if voters do not know what is going on in politics, they cannot rationally participate in government policy. And without their participation, their needs and their wants cannot possibly be understood or realized. Now, this is particularly troubling in times of war or major conflict. In large issues such as healthcare, foreign policy, social security, education, and so many other areas of social and political importance. It's worth noting that inadequate voter knowledge has two major negative implications for democracy. First, it prevents any meaningful reflection on the will of the people in a democratic government. And second, voter ignorance imperils the instrumental case for democracy as a nation that serves the interests of the majority, as ignorance potentially opens the door for both elite manipulation and gross policy errors caused by politicians' needs to appeal to an ignorant electorate in order to win office. And that's a point worth repeating. Voter ignorance imperils the instrumental case for democracy as a nation that serves the interests of the majority, as voter ignorance potentially opens the door for both elite manipulation and gross policy errors caused by politicians' needs to appeal to an ignorant electorate in order to win office. And in order to vote with informed intelligence and exert meaningful influence over given issues, that means that voters at a minimum must take the time to become aware of an issue's existence, to develop an informed position on the issue, and to understand the opposing candidate's position on the issue as well. So let's now focus in on empowering youth. See, one measure of the strength of a democracy is the participation of its younger citizens. However, many young citizens are unfamiliar with the political process and the importance of voting unless they grew up in a family that was politically engaged or happened to take a civics class or a related course in school. And just like the work ethic, perhaps a voting ethic too can be learned. See, we must impress upon our younger citizens the truth, and that is that voting is a social duty that directly affects their life and their future. Time, energy, and a focus on democratic freedoms must be invested in younger citizens, as the creation of an entire generation of non-voters could have detrimental consequences for decades to come. See, if concerned parties do not step up, the so-called snowball effect threatens to decimate the importance of voting for future generations. Just think about it. How can anyone expect today's younger citizens to advocate voting to their own children when they don't care enough to vote themselves? Let me wrap this up with one last insight. All rights carry with them responsibilities and obligations. Our rights deserve our utmost attention and our vigilant protection. And achieving the right to vote has proven to be a hard-fought accomplishment for all races and genders throughout history. So now that each and every citizen in our country has the right to vote in any given election, they must exercise this right. So let your voice be heard. Get out there and vote.